Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. So, hope you had a nice break. It's over. The next break is coming up. Thanksgiving break. Yeah, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then Thanksgiving break for a week. And then we've got, I think it's actually like only about 3 weeks after that. Yeah, till the Christmas break, and that's a 2-week break. And so, yeah, we're just one day at a time. Listen to your teachers as they point out what kinds of assessments they're going to be giving toward the end of this semester. I know that there is, because teachers and definitely students didn't really want to do, return. No, but I mean, here's the thing. It obviously, ladies, gentlemen, it obviously is different this time around because we had to delay the beginning of school, so we've got that going on. In my class, your last assessment in the semester typically is always going to be the last big unit, so, which is going to be fine, which is on the Mexican Revolution, which is actually a nice, compact, yes, indeed. So, we've got that coming up. Listen very carefully, because you're going to be getting some interesting things as we wrap up. My goal, go ahead, take out your notes, is to finish up this unit. I was able to do that on the Blue Day on Friday before the break. Okay? So that will wrap up this unit. We have a quiz coming in here next time on Wednesday on the Zen chapter. That's available through, I've got the link through Google Classroom. You've got the study guide. Read that. Come in prepared for that. That's a 10-pointer. Okay? And then actually, because I don't want to have another big assessment in the same week, then we'll put off for the exam for this unit until you guys come back. Well, here's the deal. Next week, I don't see you. Because Tuesday and Thursday are the PSAT and the SAT days. So for here, what we're actually going to be doing is I think I'll probably try and plug in, I'm going to definitely plug in at some point along the way, an essay in-class experience for you to get more familiarity with how the IB essays work for, end of the senior year when you take the IB exam. It's a 50-minute essay. Wait, we got 45-minute classes. That's great. I will give you the question ahead of time. I will expect that you will put together an outline. And on this particular one, you can use that outline as you write the essay. So just to kind of get you ready and familiar, the goal is ultimately by the time you get to the end of your senior year, you will be very familiar with how to do an IB history essay and how much time it takes and the structure and all that kind of stuff, okay? So, bit by bit by bit, we sort of, I refer to it as like calibrating you. I don't know if you guys understand like calibration, like if you're going to make sure a machine works fine. We're going to turn you into IB history essay writing machines. Okay? I mean, that's the thing, right? So, but in the meantime, like next time after we finish the test, we'll get started on World War I. And I think what I'm going to do is for next week when you're at home, like not coming in on the 2 green days that we don't have school, except for PSAT and SAT, I'll have some World War I related video that I've used at times in class, and it will be very good. And so that will be what you'll be working on. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Sure. Okay, just look for that, because it'll be all in Google Classroom and so forth. Other things. Oh, because I have been putting this, I'm very conscious about putting stuff on Google Classroom. Is there any other due dates, Gary, that you're aware of as far as like if you want to get some extra points in this class? The vote thing, yeah. When do you need to get the vote thing in? The prediction. November 2nd is a green day. So if you come in and you're going to be in school, that'll be after, like I don't see you next week. I'll see you 3 times this week, none next week. And then 3 times the following week. The Monday will be the first time. So if you have that prepared, bring it in. It's very interesting. I would say probably 30, 35 states, pretty clear how they're going to turn out. The other ones are very much in play. Those are the places that Biden and Trump are putting their resources in, whether physically visiting or spending a lot of money on campaign ads and things like that. Those are going to be the ones that keep a close eye on those as far as the polls. Okay, so try and do as well as you can on that. That's a one-time only extra credit opportunity that will be wrapped up in 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks and 1 day. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yes. An exchange student from the Netherlands. Yeah. 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 No, it's just like, actually, and if you really do just focus on the polls, that's what it does. I mean, if you think, oh, well, Georgia's always Republican. I don't know this time. Is it going to go for Biden or is Trump going to carry it? It's a little bit closer. Texas, oh my gosh, you know, that's gone for Republican for many, many years. Is that going to go Democrat? I don't know. So 2 weeks. Obviously, actually, you guys, I'll be able to see you the day after the election, so we'll have lots to talk about in the midst of doing.
If we actually know, we probably won't know.
I don't know. We'll know some things. We'll know what we know, and we'll know what we don't know. Okay?
It'll be like Inauguration Day, and both of them are up there, and they announce that.
If it's a close election, that would be an issue. All right. Let's go ahead and stand for the pledge. Okay. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right. So, as I said, whoops, is that good? Come on. There we go. Good. It does work. Let's pick up where we left off. If this sounds like, let me just double check. Look at some of the last notes. Great White Fleet. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we got to the Great White Fleet and Teddy Roosevelt, okay? And I think we did talk a little bit about the importance of the areas that we had taken over, Puerto Rican citizenship, 1917. The Philippines, we keep an eye on that. That's going to be eventually gaining independence in 1946. And lots of Filipino migration, as well as Puerto Rican migration to the United States of America in the years thereafter. Okay? I want to turn our attention then now to, okay, so we're going to go good pace on this part here. Are you ready? Here we go. Teddy Roosevelt obviously had served almost 8 years by the time 1908 came along. Teddy Roosevelt had promised in 1904 that he wasn't going to run again in 1908 because he had served about 8 years. And at that time in history, no one in our country for president had ever served beyond 8 years. Was there a constitutional prohibition against serving more than 8 years? No. But there was a precedent set by none other than George Washington. And people had followed that precedent time and time again. And so Teddy Roosevelt basically was like, I'm not going to run again. He was very popular, and so his popularity, in a sense, kind of almost transferred to his hand-picked choice for the Republican nomination in 1908, and that was William Howard Taft. So make sure you got William Howard Taft there, okay? And he would be elected in 1908. Teddy Roosevelt, goes off and does, he's like, the guy does not, retire. He goes off on safaris and does all kinds of various different things. He's just very, very, very active. Well, Taft comes in, and it's not necessarily a huge, huge shift, although it's a different kind of a take. He is more status quo. He's maybe not as, rambunctious of a politician as Teddy Roosevelt is. And as far as his foreign policy is concerned, here we go. The key phrase there is dollar diplomacy. Dollar diplomacy is putting United States foreign policy behind U.S. business interests. I'm like, that's nothing new. But there's a real intended focus on that. We've got a couple of examples here. One, Taft tried to help U.S. businesses to gain access and control to the Manchurian Railway, okay? And this is, of course, after all the fighting had gone on between Japan and Russia in that area. Basically, what Taft was trying to use the White House as a position to help U.S. businesses to buy it from the Japanese, from the Russians, because it was the Manchurian Railway, okay? You know, in furtherance of the old open door policy to get U.S. business interests and so forth in there, Japan was like, no, Russia, no. So they both rejected it, but it was an example of a U.S. effort to try and help U.S. businesses in that part of the world. We had more success, if you can call it that, with the United States getting involved in Latin America. We see this time and again. The United States has a great interest in Latin America, and in Taft's administration, the two places in particular, Honduras in Central America and Haiti in the Caribbean, Taft wanted to help U.S. banks invest in those countries, therefore to keep other European countries out and keep their interests out of it. Okay? And, of course, then when those countries are calling on the United States to come in and send in military force to protect our U.S. investments, we tend to do that sort of thing. And we did it in a number of presidencies, not just Taft's, but also in prior presidencies and in subsequent presidencies. And one example is Nicaragua, a Central American country. The year is 1912, Nicaragua. The United States Marines were sent in to help restore order and provide stability so that U.S. businesses' interests could do well there. And mostly when I talk about U.S. business interests, what would those be? What do you think? Not so much oil. I mean, in later times, and I don't think Nicaragua has much of an oil, but like land, you own the land. What do you grow on the land? Not so much cotton. I think it's interesting, if you remember the expression banana republics, there's a lot of like citrus products and so forth that are grown in... Yes. So the Marines stayed for 13 years. You can write that down. 13 years, okay? All right, 13 years. Now, a number of things go on between Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft. Their friendship, very strong, when Taft gets help in 1908 to get to the presidency, begins falling apart. Teddy Roosevelt isn't really happy with some of the decisions Taft makes. It's almost like, I don't know, have you ever like taken over a task from an older sibling and then they just weren't satisfied with what you were doing? And they started criticizing you. And you're just like, what am I supposed to do? Well, that's kind of Taft's position because he ends up becoming under really strong criticism from Roosevelt. Roosevelt's like, you're not doing the job well enough. And Taft hates the job. I mean, it's so political. Put this down. After he loses, and he will lose in 1912, Taft will lose in 1912. He's the only person in the U.S. history that I'm aware of that was appointed to the United States Supreme Court after serving as president. Yeah. And he likes it a lot better. It's a lot calmer. I mean, still, it's got plenty of controversy and so forth, but it's not like being president of the United States. That is a very, very controversial position. Oh, and it helps him, because while he's in the White House and being president, it stresses him out so much, he gains more and more weight. And so he actually, he gets quite a bit more healthy. Exactly, yeah. After he leaves the White House, he gets a little bit more healthy. He's able to kind of calm down things a little bit. But nevertheless, 1912 was the toughest year, perhaps, for Taft and the relationship he had with Roosevelt, because Roosevelt's like, hey, Taft, you need to go. So you can see that kind of in this cartoon where you've got Taft receiving kind of like this nomination scroll from Teddy Roosevelt here with the squinty eyes and the big smile. And then here's Teddy Roosevelt going, come on, hand it back, with a gun. You don't use guns in politics. You don't do those sorts of things. But basically what Teddy Roosevelt is saying is, I'm going to get the Republican nomination from you. Write it down. 1912, Teddy Roosevelt runs for the Republican nomination for president. Now here's the deal. Things were a bit different back in those days. When you guys were doing predictions for the primary for the Democratic nomination, right? There were lots of states that had primaries and some had caucuses. It was pretty much up to the voters to decide. Not so much back then. Write this down. 1912, a lot of the decision about who was going to be the national nominee for president was made by the top people within the party. And a lot of the top people within the party, the Republican Party, preferred Taft over Roosevelt. These were some of the same ones that were like, we don't want to have Roosevelt as the governor of New York. Let's make him be vice president. He can do no harm there. Yeah, right. So even though Teddy Roosevelt arguably was more popular among voters, put this down, he did not get the nomination. Who got the nomination of the Republican Party in 1912? Taft. So, does that mean Teddy Roosevelt's just going to be like not involved anymore? He is going to be the nominee of what is called the Progressive Party, or sometimes referred to by their mascot as the Bull Moose Progressive Party. So you see a cartoon here. On the far left there is Teddy Roosevelt, candidate for the Bull Moose Progressive Party. It's one of those years where you have a strong third-party candidacy. Former president running against a president. Here in the middle, there's the Republican symbol, the elephant, and that's Taft. And then, of course, you have a Democratic candidate right here in Woodrow Wilson. We'll talk more about him in a moment. So you have basically a three-way serious contention. Some of you guys might remember this. I think I did this in the last quarter. We talk about what happens when a major party splits. Usually that means bad news for that major party. As it turns out, you can see, here is the popular vote. Taft came in third in the popular vote. Teddy Roosevelt was right. He was more popular as a candidate than William Howard Taft. But here's the problem. Since they split the base of the Republican Party vote across the country, Woodrow Wilson, you can write this down, he only had 41% of the overall vote, but he won. Because, let me see, Woodrow Wilson had 41%, Teddy Roosevelt had 27% of the popular vote, and Taft had 23%. See, Taft got Vermont and Utah. I don't expect that to happen in your lifetime. Vermont that's like, that's Bernie Sanders' territory, and it tends to be much more left today. And Utah, of course, is much more to the right, very conservative area. But here you see Teddy Roosevelt came in first place in a handful of states, but in first place in most of the states, so getting a landslide, was Woodrow Wilson. So that was it. The Republican Party split. Did they come back together for the next presidential election in 1916? Yes, but then they were running against Woodrow Wilson. And we'll talk more about Woodrow Wilson in the next unit when we talk about, let's see, what is the issue in 1916? Oh, World War I. Slogan, he kept us out of the war. Yeah, we'll look at that one. But eventually the Republicans will win 1920, 24, 28, and then the Great Depression comes along and totally changes up politics in this country, and you will see Democrats getting elected to the White House 32, 36, 40, 44, and 48. That's the longest string of consecutive victories in the last 100 years for one party. Okay, so goodbye Taft, goodbye Teddy Roosevelt, and welcome Woodrow Wilson. Here we go. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, interesting person, born in Virginia. Last president to be born in Virginia. There was a lot of them in the early years. And he ended up moving to New Jersey, where he was before he was governor of New Jersey, he was like the president of Princeton University. So he's very academic-y, very intelligent, very kind of standoffish. He's not really like a, mix in the crowd kind of politician like Teddy Roosevelt. In fact, it's said about Woodrow Wilson, he likes people in the abstract, but not necessarily so much like face-to-face and, and that sort of thing. And sometimes that's going to be a problem with him. When we get to the World War I issue, and he's like, hey, I got this figured out. I know how to do this. I'll work on the treaty, and it'll be fine. And then here, you can just rubber stamp it, United States Congress, and particularly the United States Senate. The Republicans in the majority in the Senate are going to go, yeah, no, you need to work with us. So he's got a little bit of an issue there. Here is some interesting things he does as president domestically. He starts to get a change in the way our country collects revenue. Anybody know what would be the major way our country collected revenue in, say, I don't know, the first 100 or so years of our country? Very good. Import taxes. Write that down. Very good. Import taxes, tariffs. So, Garen, what is a potential not so good thing about collecting revenue for the United States government, primarily on the basis of taxing stuff that's coming into the country? Depends on how you set. I mean, if you set the rates higher and higher and higher, are you going to get more money in? Why not? Yeah, because basically you have to add on that tax to the sale of the product price, and that will reduce the amount of trade going on. And plus, what can other countries do if you put a bunch of taxes on stuff coming from them? Yes. Trade wars, right. And we got into quite a bit of that over the last couple of years. President Trump identifies some things that are not quite right as far as China's policies and decides to go ahead and put tariffs on China's goods. And China was like, yeah, we're ready for that game. And they were putting tariffs on our stuff, and it was like kind of nasty back and forth. And ultimately, both sides ended up pulling back because there was less trade going on between the United States and China. Very, very difficult. So what is the major source of revenue now for the national government that we really started kicking it into gear during the time of Roosevelt? Income taxes. Write that down. Income taxes. Okay? We start seeing a shift towards that during the time of Wilson. We also see during that time they create the Federal Reserve System, which we still have around today, to help regulate banks as well as the currency in the country. Okay? All right. Now, we're going to be talking lots about Wilson when it comes to World War I in a later unit, or actually in our next unit, which is the World War I unit. But let's talk about his foreign policy, sometimes referred to as moral diplomacy, right? The United States is going to be moral. We're going to do the right thing. You know, we're not going to be pushing people around. Doesn't that sound good?
Yeah.
We'll be nice. Although, on closer examination, the United States does seem to get involved in the affairs of other countries. So when push comes to shove, you know, it's like, I'm going to be the good guy. And then you get challenged, and you're like, I'm going to put that good guy thing over here for a moment and be the strong guy, and then I'll go back to being the good guy later on. Okay? So a couple of examples here. He did send in troops. Write this down. Woodrow Wilson sent in the United States troops. A couple of examples. And actually, they both take place in the same island, the island of Hispaniola. Check this. Raise your hand. Can anyone tell me what two countries are located in the island of Hispaniola? Perfect. Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Excellent. In 1915, President Wilson sent in troops into Haiti to protect U.S. lives and property. Of course. And then the next year, 1916, sent U.S. troops into the Dominican Republic for similar purposes. When you get to reading the Zinn chapter, if you haven't done so already, you'll see plenty of examples of where the United States is involved before Wilson, during Wilson, and so forth. And in 1916, the ones that went into the Dominican Republic, they stayed for 8 years. It's like, things haven't really calmed down enough here. We need to keep the troops there. There was, and this is actually going to take place during World War I, so it's in the context of World War I, the United States bought some territory in the Caribbean. We did, from Denmark. Yeah, I mean, usually you think of Denmark as like a small, Scandinavian country that has massive territory in Greenland, not too many people there, but they used to also own Virgin Islands. Not the British Virgin Islands, the British still had those. The Virgin Islands. And so the United States bought them in 1917 from Denmark. So what are they called now? The U.S. Virgin Islands. So if you're born in the U.S. Virgin Islands, are you a U.S. citizen? Yes, you are. Can you vote for president? No. Only in the primaries. The Republicans and Democrats allow them to participate in the nomination process, but they don't get a vote, which is why they're not on that map and that electoral college thing going on there for you. Okay? All right. President Wilson. Now, here we go. I'm going to explain some things about the United States' relationship with Mexico, our very important neighbor directly to the south, during the time of President Wilson. We're actually going to have a whole unit dedicated to the Mexican Revolution, and you'll see that it is kind of complex, and I'm going to give you some of that complexity right now just to give you a context of what Wilson does with respect to Mexico. Because there's going to be some stuff going on in Mexico, and President Wilson doesn't like it, and guess what? He's going to be, I suppose, baited into doing something. How many of you guys ever have, like, I don't know, a sibling that tries to bait you, or maybe you bait them into, like, attacking you, right? They can just come along and you're like, nick, 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 and then you're like, ah! And then, and there's, Mom! Right? You know what I'm talking about? How many of you guys are the victim of that kind of behavior on the part of younger siblings? How many of you guys are the victimizer to older siblings? No, never done. Yeah, maybe, yeah. So anyway, so it's going to be interesting here because will Wilson, Mr. Moral Diplomacy, will he take the bait and send in troops into Mexico? Yes. Yes, he will, on a couple of occasions. All right, so let's lay this out for you briefly, okay? Put this down. By 1913, Mexico has entered into a period what is called the Mexican Revolution. We'll get into a lot more of the details later on, but just suffice it to say, they had had a fairly corrupt government for many years. And that corrupt leader who'd been there for a long time, he was finally gone. His name was Diaz. We'll learn more about Diaz when we get to the Mexican Revolution unit. But the new guy that came in, 1913, his name is Francisco Madero. Do you see him on the handout? It's going to be very good to have that handout in front of you so you can see all the names as we go through, because I'm going to be saying names like Francisco Madero, Victoriano Huerta, Venustiano Carranza, Francisco Pancho Villa. I'll be talking about places like Tampico and Veracruz. Okay? So if you got those ones, and that's just a slice of what you guys are getting for that unit coming up on the Mexican Revolution. It shows an intelligent response if you use the correct letters. Okay. So, Madero, President Madero, he's in power. He's a young kind of novice president. He's the first kind of like Mexican revolutionary president. And he's got a problem because, you know, he's in power, but there's still people who are like out to get him. And you have to be careful because some of the people out to get you are the ones that actually step forward and go, I'm on your side. You got to watch those ones. There was a guy in particular. His name is Victoriano Huerta. He was a general. And he was under the old presidents, the previous presidents, like administration. And Huerta managed to get himself in a position where now he is the trusted supporter of President Madero. Well, you can see where this is going. Yeah, is right. Yeah, exactly. In 1913, Madero and his vice president, you don't need to know his name right now, were both shot and killed by forces associated with Huerta. Is right. Huerta comes in and he's like, I'm going to be the new president. This guy is dead, and I'm going to keep the country, and everything's going to be good and so forth. Well, it's an interesting thing that happens sometimes in the world. You could have a change of power in a particular country. And the United States and other countries sometimes will look and go, no. I do not accept that new government. Write this down. President Wilson did not accept the new government of Huerta. Basically refusing to recognize the brute having murdered the previous president. And in fact, the United States goes even further. We'll see. The United States is going to be very involved in Mexican issues before the Mexican Revolution and even in the early stages. Okay? The United States ends up supporting, you ready? We give military and financial support to some of the rebel forces going up against Huerta. And some of these guys had been involved in the early stages. One of them is Francisco Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa right here. And you can see, very friendly with one of the top commanders in the United States military, General Blackjack Pershing, John Pershing. So we were giving support to Villa. We were also giving support to let's make sure I get this. Oh, Venustiano Carranza. Okay, among others. So we're kind of like playing it off because, I don't know, who do we want to be friends with? Well, we don't think Huerta's going to last, and we don't like how he came to power. So we're like, okay, we're going to give some support to Villa, I'm going to give some support to Carranza, and see what happens. Well, what's going to happen? I'll tell you what. Okay? Huerta is like, oh, no, I'm in trouble. What can I do to get the Mexican people to be very much in favor of me against these people who the Americans are supporting? I know what I'll do. I'll try and drag America into the fight in Mexico. I'll try and get America to send troops into Mexico. How popular is it among Mexicans, the presence of American troops in Mexican soil? Has that ever happened, like, I don't know, in the 1840s, American troops in Mexico? How did that work out? Yeah, it's like in the 1840s, American troops went into Mexico and we whomped them, right? So we got to keep Texas, and then we took the northern third of Mexico, which became the southwest part of the United States of America, starting at the southern border of Idaho all the way down. So Mexicans aren't really fond of the United States. So here's what Huerta does. He figures Wilson's going to take the bait. Wilson's going to take the bait. And in fact, the bait was seizing U.S. sailors in Tampico. It was a port city along the Caribbean in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay? So grabbed some U.S. sailors. I think they were like private sailors on private vessels and so forth. The Mexican government grabs them. So what is the United States going to do? What do you think? Yeah, it's kind of like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So here's what President Wilson does. He sends in the United States Navy to Veracruz, write it down, another port city in Mexico. The United States Navy seizes the Mexican port of Veracruz. Is that enough to save Huerta? Does it help invigorate the population and the public opinion of Mexico to go against the United States? Yes. And also the rebels the United States supports? No, not enough. Write it down. Huerta is removed. He is removed. Okay? In spite of the fact that he's like, okay, I got these Americans that took the bait, but nevertheless, it doesn't quite work out for Huerta. We'll talk about Huerta. He's going to end up being exiled. So who takes over? July of 1914. Who takes over? Carranza. Were you not Villa? Carranza. We'll see. He's like part of there's more details coming up. But here's the deal. Carranza takes power. In the United States, do we support Carranza? Sure. So the United States supports Carranza because we had been supporting him. Well, not to complicate things, but was Villa happy, Pancho Villa happy with Carranza being the new president and everything? No. We will get into all the details as far as why those two particular men and others didn't see eye to eye. So the revolution continues. Villa is now continuing to fight against Carranza now. Do you got that? You're like, oh my gosh, there's just so many players in this thing. There are. So now, who is the United States going to support? Are we going to continue supporting Villa? Well, we had supported Carranza, and now he's in power, and do we like that? Sure. So what are we going to do with Villa? We no longer support him. Write it down. We no longer support him, and he don't like that. He's like, what? You don't support me? And so Villa is now fighting against the forces of Carranza, and he comes up with an idea. It's not a new idea, but it seems to work out sometimes, someplace. Guess what Villa is going to do? Austin, guess what Villa is going to do to get an attempt to get the Mexican people behind him against Carranza? What do you think, Austin? Throw a party. Really? A party? Who's going to be invited to the party? Let's opinion. Oh my gosh. Somebody tell me. What's he going to do? All right, here we go. I'll tell you. I don't have the date here. I'll give it to you in the next unit. But soon after, Villa and his supporters murder 16 mining engineers, 4 U.S. mining engineers located operating in a U.S. business-held mine, and there were quite a few of them, in Mexico. And just to make sure that the message is clear that U.S. interests are not safe in Mexico, if Pancho Villa has anything to say about it, you know what he does to really, really tweak him off? What would really tweak off the United States of America? To definitely get the president to respond. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. I mean, what did it take for the United States to respond to Japan? I mean, Japan was attacking China. We'll get to this later. Japan is attacking here. Japan is attacking there. What finally woke us up and go, yeah, we got you now? They attack American soil. Write this down. Pancho Villa leads a raid into America, in the United States of America. Okay? He leads a raid. Now, and he goes into New Mexico. There's a town right across the border in New Mexico, which is part of our territory. And he kills 19. They basically attacked. And then the United States President Wilson's like, that is not good. No. I'm going to get you. And of course, that was exactly what Pancho Villa wanted. He's trying to use the old playbook thing of if you attack the United States and draw the United States forces into Mexico, of course, what does Pancho Villa? Does he stay in that town ready to fight the U.S. forces? No. Where does he go? He goes into Mexico. Does he take a stand there? No. Write this down. Now we have none other than his old buddy, General Pershing. That's who President Wilson puts in charge of the effort to find Pancho Villa, to get retribution against Pancho Villa. And he sends General Pershing and the United States military into Mexico to find Villa. And they're looking here. They're looking there. Who knows northern Mexico very well? Villa. Does he know how to hide out? Very well. Is Pershing ever going to find him? No. This cartoon basically shows him like trying to stamp out various different snakes. Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting thing, because what is Villa hoping to be accomplished by this? The Mexicans will be rising up against Carranza, who's being supported by the United States. The United States is sending in troops. We can make a note of this. It doesn't work out that well ultimately for Villa. I mean, it's a nice try, whatever. It's a nice tactical thing. And eventually, will the United States, I mean, are we going to give up? Yes. January 1917, we give up. We give up. President Wilson orders Pershing to pull out of Mexico. We can't find Villa. We've been around there for what now, a couple of years or so. I don't know, is there anything else that, I don't know, a major like military officer like General Pershing could be involved in, let's say in the year 1917? World War I, yeah. The United States will enter World War I in 1917, and who's going to be in charge of the United States Expeditionary Forces being sent over there to Europe? It's going to be Pershing. He's going to be the overall commander of that effort. What's going to go on in Mexico? We'll get back to Mexico. There's plenty more details and so forth, but let's put it this way. It don't work out too well for Villa. Although it doesn't work out too well for Carranza either. There's a lot of guys in the Mexican Revolution it doesn't work out too well for. Lots of them. It's a very, very interesting, which is... Well, they tried that. We already talked about that, remember? Yeah? Yeah, they had a revolution like in a bar in like Ontario or something. Yeah, don't you remember the Upper Canada Rebellion? Yeah, there was 5 of them. Yeah, and when the front row got down to reload, then the ones in the back row thought that they'd fallen and died, and so they ran away. It was a mess. Yeah, so there you go, Mexico. A little bit of a sense. President Wilson, definitely interested in getting involved there. Now, I want to throw this term out to you, put it into your vocabulary, into your notes here. Jingoism. We don't really see it so much in the textbook. You definitely see it in the Zen thing. And good luck trying to find somebody in the United States today that fits the definition of being a jingo. This is a nice definition, and it probably, of the people we've talked about so far, maybe it comes closest to Teddy Roosevelt. A aggressive foreign policy, extreme patriotism and nationalism. Yay, United States of America. Yay, yay, yay. Very interesting, because somebody would say, like, President Trump, is he a jingo? Does he place U.S. interests first? But does he follow an aggressive foreign policy? Not so much. No, his tack is more like America first, as in, like, let's move our resources to focus on America. A jingo would focus on America is great, and we're willing to use military force in different parts of the world in order to accomplish that. So a jingo would support, say, the Spanish-American War and other conflict in sending troops over. Okay? All right? How many of you guys have read the Zen yet? You've got 48 hours. Okay? Take some time with that one. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's like, it was a break. Hello, Mr. Hansen. It was a break. You were working on other stuff. Yeah, exactly. You were working on other stuff. So Howard Zen, here he is, and he published A People's History of the United States, which gives a different kind of an angle look at U.S. history. And as I say, he's not interested in making so much money off of it. He's got them all out there, you know, free access, PDF, and so forth. His book was talked positively by a character played by Matt Damon in a movie that also starred Robin Williams. You know what I'm talking about? Which movie?
No, I'm just saying, you put those two together, it can't be bad.
Have you guys seen this one, Good Will Hunting?
No,
Right?
no, I mean,
Matt Damon right here plays a young man who's from, difficult circumstances and so forth, but he's very, very, very bright. And Robin Williams plays a psychologist trying to help him work out some of the issues and so forth through that. And in an early meeting that they had, Matt Damon gives a positive report about Howard Zen, like, that's a great book, and and so forth. Right? Which is very interesting, because I remember not too long ago, my students were like, oh my gosh, Mr. Hansen, you look just like Matt Damon. Maybe not that picture, but what about that one?
What the heck? You look like Matt Damon.
yeah,
You're Matt Damon.
yeah,
Wow.
I don't even know who that is. You are not-
So that was another movie he did called The Informant, which I watched, and I'm like, what a terrible character.
Yeah.
His face on the left.
Do that face.
Although in that picture he has hair color, right? So here is another picture of him in that. And so I actually made that my doppelganger on Facebook for a while. People are like, oh my gosh, you look just like him. Although now I've got white hair, whatever. And then I was reading the thing, it was like, oh my gosh, I look like Matt Damon. He was talking about the role that he played and how he gained 20 pounds. I'm like, thanks, dude. Thanks a lot. Yeah, anyway, so, yeah, there we go. That is funny. Oh, and I had a clip, but that's okay. We don't have enough time for the video clip from there. Oh, it's a 3-minute clip. I'll put it on while you're wiping down the desks. Ben Affleck is his friend, and they're trying to make friends in a bar.
Elementary. I remember that class. It was just between recess and lunch.
Ooh.
Should we laugh? Just having fun in my No, there's no problem.
Oh, now Matt Damon's going to step in.
Some insight into the evolution of the market economy in the southern colonies. My contention is that prior to the Revolutionary War, the economic modalities, especially in the southern colonies, could most aptly be characterized as agrarian pre-capital. Of course, that's hang on a second.
Oh, here we go.
We just got finished reading some Maxine's throwing comparison problem. Even convinced of that next month when you get to James Lemon, we're going to be talking about
Matt Damon reads his books.
Virginia and Pennsylvania were
Be Matt Damon.
That's gonna last until next year.
Read your books.
Talking about, the pre-revolutionary utopia and the capital forming effects of military mobilization.
We start required. Which are those days?
Drastically underestimates the impact of social
Would drastically underestimate the impact of social distinctions predicated upon wealth, especially inherited wealth. You got that from business. Working Essex County, page 98.
Well, I don't.
Page 98.
You're gonna plagiarize all the paperwork?
He's wicked smart.
But you decide your thing, you're gonna evaluate some obscure passage and then pretend you can pawn it off as your own ideas and take it personally. There's my friend. See, the sad thing about a guy like you is in 50 years you're gonna start doing some thinking on your own, and you're gonna come up with the fact that there were two certainties. One, don't do that. And two, you dropped 150 grand on a fucking education you could have got.
Oh, sorry for the bad language. He's got a little bit more of that.
Yeah, but I will have to agree. You'll be serving my kids fries at a drive-thru on our way to a skiing trip.
But at least that won't be unoriginal. But I mean, if you have a problem with that, you can just step outside and figure it out.
Figure it out.
Man, there's no problem.
It's cool. It's cool. Cool.
My boy's wicked smart. Is that what they're going to say about you? My boy's wicked smart. My girl's wicked smart. Oh. Oh, he comes back. Oh, sorry. Oh, here we go. Do you like apples?
You like apples?
Yeah.
Ba-dum-bum. Shh. How do you like them apples? Have a good day. Enjoy reading Howard Zinn, Matt Damon's favorite history book. Be like Matt Damon. Be wicked smart.
It's not.
Wicked smart.